This is Hannibal here from thehannibaltv.com. I'm 8 years late to review the Ric Flair 30 for 30 documentary that was recently released on Netflix. And I have Netflix now. I watched it and I just wanted to make some comments about it. Ric Flair is one of, if not my favorite wrestler of all time. I loved him growing up, saw him live many, many times growing up. Met him a few times as a wrestler and once as a reporter, where his significant other at the time, Wendy Barlow, would not let him do an interview with me. And even in some of the footage of this, she seems like very controlling, but maybe that was controlling in a good way for Rick, who we haven't heard that much from since the death of Wendy Barlow's son, which would have been his stepson since they were together for so long. However, just before he killed himself, they had announced that they were breaking up. A lot of people say that they weren't actually married, so it's questionable whether he was married 4 or 5 times. There is pictures of them together that look like wedding pictures, for whatever that's worth. But let's get into this. I mean, I used to look up to him, and a lot of the things he did that I kind of tried to act in that way, I regret looking up to him for, because obviously they caused some problems in his life and they caused some problems in my life. So I regret looking up to him in some ways. He's so entertaining. He's one of the best, if not the best, promos of all time. Again, I'm not a fan of modern wrestling, but I watched this and overall enjoyed it. I'd seen clips of it before on YouTube, but never the full thing, and the hour just flew by. He basically says in this that, Sting talks about the stories of him being naked in public. A lot of people talk about the stories of him constantly getting naked in public and on our airplanes, flashing people. In the days before cell phones, you could get away with this. Obviously, that wouldn't fly at all now. And with how PC everything is in wrestling now, who knows if anyone would even risk Ric Flair in a job, even though he's one of the most entertaining wrestlers out there to this day. AEW had him under contract, didn't even use him, really. Used him like 3 times for nothing really memorable. And then sat him at home for months and then released him. They did. Then they used him famously in Charlotte and didn't advertise him. Typical AEW move. Something straight out of WCW's playbook. But AEW wastes money and has worse promotion reputation than WCW for sure. Ric Flair says in this, and this made so much publicity at the time, that he had sex with 10,000 women, and just think about that. How long could he have been faithful to his wife if he had had sex with 10,000 women? He's been with 5 wives. How long could he have been faithful to any of them for? He says he was miserable when he didn't cheat. He said he only took his marriages seriously for about a day, and he was bored when he would be at home. One of his wives on this said he loved his kids, but he was not a family man and not trustworthy. David Flair said that Ric Flair neglected his kids. His other daughter, the one that is in Charlotte, I think her name is Megan, said that he would buy them gifts instead of spending time with them, and would give her like Cabbage Patch Kids dolls that were popular in the 80s, like 20 at a time. So, and of course, Reed ended up dying, I believe, a heroin addict. So clearly, his kids had success. It's debatable how much of a good father he was, but I think David Flair's been pretty successful. He is in this. Obviously, I just quoted him. He looked like he put on some weight. I've heard he's been very successful in life. And of course, Charlotte Ashley Flair has done great. I think Megan's married to Conrad Thompson, who I will say there was one issue I have with him not crediting me in the past, but overall, I think he's a good guy. Here's a funny thing, considering I'm in Wichita right now, and I'm here to focus on training and to get in shape and to clear my head. But Ric Flair said he hated Wichita because he was bored there and he didn't like the idea of sitting around in his hotel. So he always found something to do. He did not like Kansas, which is funny. I know that this territory was kind of covered by Harley Race's Missouri territory back in the territory days, which paid low. But it's just funny, like every single night he had to party. It's a miracle he's still alive. It's a true miracle. He's superhuman in a lot of ways. Because I always hear like he was never even hungover. He was always full of energy. And I remember doing a Harley race camp with him, and I don't remember the year exactly. Maybe it was 2016. I think it was 2015 actually. And I remember the energy he had when he came in the room, and he had us do free squats was one of the things. And I just felt so much energy from that. And by the way, he did tell me after he watched my match that night at Harley Race's World League Wrestling show that he was going to recommend me to Triple H. And I did get an NXT tryout the next year that was mysteriously canceled 10 days before, with no explanation ever given. Gerald Briscoe helped me get that tryout too. But I won't digress into that. I'll just say from that interaction with Flair, to have done a camp with him to have seen my match, and when I asked him for advice, he said, "You're good. I'm recommending you. You're one of the 4 guys I'm recommending to Triple H." He said there was 4 guys in the camp. So that was cool to hear from him. And we wrestled in front of him in a tag team match that day. As far as the WrestleMania 8 match with Hulk Hogan that everyone thought was going to happen, they talked about that not happening. Flair basically said in this he didn't care because he went on to have a lot of famous matches with Hogan. I do agree. I don't know why. I still disagree with. They had the Hogan versus Flair at a bunch of house shows in WWE. They never. I can't think of one like major match between Hogan and Flair one-on-one in WWE that was publicized to the world. Yes, they had Hogan against my old friend Sid, who I miss very much. Miss talking to him on the phone. Thought he was a great guy. They put Hogan against Sid in the main event of WrestleMania 8. As much as I like Hogan's matches overall, and I'm a big fan of Sid, that was one of the worst WrestleMania main events ever. With Papa Shango interfering, the Warrior interfering, Sid kind of disappearing not too long after that, Hogan disappearing, and the Warrior not even lasting that long after. It just seemed like such a crappy main event. I remember the build up to Ric Flair and Randy Savage, and I was like hook, line, and sinker into it. And like I remember I was so mad about the angle that like Flair was doing with Elizabeth at the time that I can't remember a match I've ever been into that much where I wanted Randy Savage to win. I can't think of any match in the history of wrestling. I know I was in grade 3 or 4 at the time. I just remember like listening to, because in those days, if your parents were cheap like mine and wouldn't buy pay-per-views, you could watch it on a fuzzy screen. You could hear the commentary. And like sometimes the fuzz would give you like a black and white image of what was going on. Of course, I saw it many times after it came out on tape, but I remember even listening to it on this TV that my parents let me listen to, because they wouldn't let me watch it on their main TV because they thought I was stupid for watching it. But to me, it's no different than listening to a sport on the radio. But I just remember like being so happy when Randy beat Flair. There was so much emotion in that when Elizabeth came down and everything. I don't know. I can't remember feeling that much emotion. Hey, and you know what's great that they did back then that they don't do now? Now, whenever anyone interferes, the Titantron comes on. They have big entrances. Their music plays. Takes away any believability of an interference. Remember WrestleMania 8 when Miss Elizabeth just comes down? She just comes down and it's very real. So you buy into it. The realism is gone. Brett versus Roddy, I mean, it was the second best match. It didn't really have much heat to it, honestly. The first Flair Hogan match was December 30th, 1990 in Hawaii. Actually, I was just in Hawaii. And Don Morocco told me that WWE hasn't even been there for years. There's not much going on right now in Hawaii for wrestling, other than small independent shows. The one thing that Hogan said Flair was the better worker than him because Flair has hundreds of hour-long matches. Hogan's never done an hour-long match. I will be perfectly honest with you. I do not like hour-long matches. I find them boring to watch. And I've never been in one. Actually, at that same Harley race camp that Ric Flair came to on one of the days they made us all wrestle for an hour, there was many matches going on at the same time. I didn't like it. The most I've ever wrestled is like half an hour against AJ Styles, which was fine. But I think an hour is like, I know why they did it, but to me, longer isn't better. I never liked Iron Man matches. It's just, I don't have the attention span to sit there and watch a match for an hour, particularly in those days when a lot of times you're wrestling like random people in territories and you got to go an hour. I mean, good for Flair that he liked doing it. Maybe that's why he drank so much. Because I guess the good part about that is you get exercise from wrestling. But as a fan, and I also know why they did it, because they didn't want to book as many matches. A lot of times in those days, they wanted to take up time on the cards, so they didn't have to use as many people. Back when people had to make money from live events. But to me, being able to go an hour, like that doesn't necessarily mean better. I can't think of 1 hour long match that comes to my head right now that I've ever really enjoyed watching. The saddest part of this, and I really felt for Rick when they played the 911 call of Reed dying and Ric Flair saying he's turning purple and stuff. My God, my heart goes out to him on that. I mean, no matter, I know he doesn't necessarily like me. I think he knows. Overall, he's one of my favorite wrestlers, and I think the pizza promo from this year was probably the most entertaining thing I've seen in wrestling this year, even though technically it wasn't wrestling, but it was the best heel promo I've seen all year from that Florida pizza incident of Ric Flair, and it got mainstream publicity. What did AEW do out of it? Nothing. And he was under contract to them. They didn't even use the heat that he had from that and the publicity to pop a rating. Stupid. As far as Triple H says in this, Ric Flair is a liar. I don't know what's going on. At one point, Flair was saying Triple H was his best friend. Triple H said that at some points he allowed Reed, when Reed was under contract, to take a second test, knowing that he would get a second test, and he would fail the second test after he failed the first test. And I can tell you, back when, I don't know what the policy is now. I know they allow TRT and stuff, and different wrestlers have different rules they got to abide by. And the Chris Benoit thing was long enough ago that it doesn't seem to be as heavily enforced. There's a lot of massive guys in both companies. But I remember when I got signed, they asked me if I could pass a test right away, or if they wanted to if they would FedEx me a drug test that I could take and have my family doctor look at it to make sure I could pass one. And if the family doctor okayed it, then I could go and take the real one in Pittsburgh. I wasn't on anything when I was signed by WWE, so I just said, no, I'll go ahead and take the test. But I know that's happened with a bunch of wrestlers. But that's how they got around it. And like Triple H kind of confirms it there. They were going to tell Rick Reed that he had a test coming up so he could clean out. Because the people that they really want, they'll do stuff like that for. Constipated in City likes hour-long matches with Billy Robinson and Nick Bockwinkel. There you go. I don't know if you're telling the truth, and I don't know who you are. But I can't tell you honestly that I was ever a fan of watching Billy Robinson or Nick Bockwinkel matches. I'm not saying they're not great technicians, but I'm just not I'm not an enjoyment of prearranged technical wrestling. If I want to see technical wrestling, I'll watch the Olympics or UFC. I want to see entertainment from real wrestling, and to have, honestly, I'll put Dory Funk in that same category. Billy Robinson, Nick Bockwinkel, Dory Funk. Oh my God. And I did meet Nick Bockwinkel on several occasions, and I really liked him. But guys, I would give that documentary a thumbs up. Sorry I'm late, but there's probably a lot of people that are just watching it now that it's on Netflix. I don't know if we get ESPN in Canada or not. I sure as hell never got it on any of my cable packages, and they never had this up free on YouTube, to my knowledge. So it was my first time watching it. Thumbs up, and I hope Ric Flair's okay. And I wish him and his family the best. And I was really sad to hear the part about Reed. So have a great night. I'm going to be right back with a review of Netflix Investigation Aliens Episode 3, a series I've been loving. Oh, I'll get the last comment. Somebody liked the Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels, said it was okay, other than no falls till 60 minutes. I remember when that match happened at the time, me and my friend were bored out of our minds. That was one of the worst the best match from that WrestleMania 12 was Goldust against Roddy Piper. I think 11 and 12 were two of the worst WrestleManias from back in the times that I liked watching wrestling from my childhood. I like WCW more in those years.